Welcome to the We Are All Dying podcast. My name is Jenna Goodhand, and my hope through these conversations is that we become more comfortable, competent, and knowledgeable about death, dying, loss, and grief, so that we can have these conversations with each other, so that when death does come, which inevitably it will come to all those we know and love, and even ourselves, we feel a little bit more prepared. And that we also live our day-to-day lives with that knowledge and awareness that this is temporary, this is special. And I'm so excited that today I'm going to share with you my conversation with Minakshi Dewan. She is a researcher and writer with a PhD in social medicine and community health. Her work spans traditional healing, gender, disability, and food systems. She knows a lot about a lot of things. And today we explore her best-selling book, Final Farewell: Understanding the Last Rites and Rituals of India's Major Faiths. We also touch on digital deaths and death tourism. I hope you enjoy. Well, welcome to the show, Minakshi. I'm so excited to have you here today.
I'm really honored to be here. Thanks for inviting me to be a part of this really nice podcast that you run.
Oh, thank you. I know we both share the importance of talking about death and the things that we want to have happen at the end of our lives. And we both recognize it's not a conversation a lot of people want to have, no matter where in the world that they are. And so, yeah, I just want to commend you and share gratitude for the work that you've done, bringing some of these really important topics to light. I also
Yeah,
want,
I, I feel it's important that we talk about these things. And thank you for the podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome. I also want to share that my intention today is to learn myself. Also, for some of our listeners, they might not have any sort of background knowledge on the rites of the major faiths and religions in Indian culture around, death. But also, we have some listeners who are, from India or their families are. And so I'm hoping that we also can honor that. So a conversation that's for everybody. And yeah, so I just want to share that this is kind of a conversation I hope will educate, but also maybe bring some personal knowledge or connection for some of the listeners as well. I like to start by asking our guests if they can remember their first experience with death. Do you remember what that was for you?
I was, I think, 9 or 10 years old when I lost my uncle, my mother's brother. I have a very, very vague memory of this experience. I remember my mother was grieving and everybody was around, and he was wrapped in this white sheet. Beyond that, I don't have much recollection of what happened. Then I remember my grandmother's funeral, but I was in another city when she passed away, and the grown-ups were mostly managing every bit of the rituals. So I don't remember much. I just broadly remember the prayer service and other stuff around it. But for my father, I have a very, very clear memory because that just happened in 2019, and I lost my mother in October last year. So it's been tough, but I was a chief mourner. We had two sisters, and in among Hindus, it's mostly sons who perform the last rites of their parents. The elder son, but the male members usually. So for us, I am the younger daughter. We are two sisters. So my sister, she was more comfortable in me performing all the rituals. So that was a little different in our case, but thankfully no one objected. So I have a very clear memory of that, and also because I was a chief mourner, so I was performing every ritual, and I was asked to do things by the priest, and I was following their instructions. So that's of course more vivid for me. And for my mother, of course, I mean, this is very close because it just happened in October. It's been 6 months now. So I remember everything because I was also managing things alone this time because my husband was traveling and my sister is in the US. when my father passed away, she was around because he was terminally ill. So she was around. We knew it was coming. So, but in my mother's case, she was bedridden since last 2 years. So, yeah, so we didn't know, yeah, we could see the signs, but you don't know. So it's difficult for people to be, around. So, yeah,
Oh, I'm so sorry for those important losses in your life.
yeah.
Has so your book was written after the loss of your father, but before the loss of your mother. Um, how did the book play into sort of these two experiences for you?
It's been really important because so when I lost my father, I observed things uh, which were difficult, but which were also very intriguing at the same time. Being a researcher, you have a different lens, and when you look at things, I remember, uh, talking to the cremation worker who was assisting us during the last rites, and you go to the crematorium like number of times. You go once to light the funeral pyre, then you go again to collect the ashes, and then there are other rituals to be performed in the following days. So I remember going, and I remember seeing his eyes, and there was this slur in his eyes, and it looked like as if he's intoxicated perpetually. Like whenever I went, it was almost like, something was not right. So I wondered why is he like so intoxicated all the time? And then on the 11th day rituals, which are very important in Hindus, like 11th day is considered again important because it is believed that the soul transitions from one disembodied soul to, it goes and meets the ancestors. So it's considered a very important transition in that sense. So I remember talking to another priest who was assisting us, and I checked with him. I said, "So you were also part of other life cycle rituals?" And he was a little taken aback, and he was a little shocked, and he just looked at me and he was like, "I mean, you're very ignorant. Don't you know that, the pandits the priests who assist on the 11th day are not usually part of the auspicious kind of ceremonies?" And that's when I realized there is a separate category of priests. There is a hierarchy. And then, I mean, so these things stayed with me. And then we went to Haridwar to immerse that's a family tradition. So we went there to immerse my father's ashes. And then we have these priests who keep the genealogical records. And those records have been kept intact for generations. So you have these really big piles that they have in their office rooms, and they would ask you your village name and your caste, your gotra, and they will pull out these records for you, and then you update these records.
Wow.
So that was a very interesting experience because I could see the records written by my great grandfather like years ago, and the ink was still intact. So that was little, yeah, that was a fun experience for us. So I think those things stayed with me, and then of course the COVID-19 came, and things were haywire. In India, the death toll was high, the spaces had shrunk to a large extent, especially for Hindus, because you need more space for conducting cremations, you need wood, so the supplies have to be intact. So the situation was quite bad in India, and that's when I thought that there has to be a book that kind of records all these experiences of people and how they're managing grief around this time when the physical proximity with your loved ones is not possible. So that's when I decided to write the
Yeah.
book.
Wow. I mean, India is such a large country and there's many major faiths. So how did you sort of make that all work into one book? Did you sort of begin the journey thinking you were going to look at the different faiths? Or did that kind of come as you were going, realizing there's important things from each that you wanted to share?
While I was submitting the proposal, I was, talking to my commissioning editor, and we were discussing, and she said, "How about exploring five faiths in India, like the major ones?" And I was a little reluctant because I was not very well versed with. I mean, I was not even well versed with my own religion, and then it comes to when it comes to other religion, I was quite clueless about how to go about things. But then, of course, I took the plunge, and then it was good fun because I started talking, and there was so much learning because for Hindus and Sikhs and Jains and Buddhists, it's not much different. But for other, like for Christians, you bury, and for Muslims, you again bury, but the rituals are very different. And then for in Zoroastrianism, it's totally different. We call them Parsis in India, and it's totally different because they leave the corpse at the Towers of Silence, the Makstini. So that was totally different, and that system is also transitioning in a way now. So it was good to understand all those nuances and interview priests from different religions. So yeah, it
Yeah,
was.
I'm sure it was like time traveling also because these rituals and practices have been around for so long and passed down. It's so interesting, hearing about the rituals that you had with your father's pathing. And, you know, I, I've been a part of many funerals, but they're very short and they're usually 1 or 2 days. And there's not a lot of participation happening. And so I'm wondering, like, so from my perspective, I'm so fascinated and, like just thinking of even all the things that you have to um, kind of perform, like you're kind of performing this honor towards the person that you've lost. And, maybe there's some pressure or anxiety or concern around doing it the right way. I don't know if you feel that at all. And then also, what was your experience like when you were looking at other major faiths and their rituals, and maybe how simple they were? Did you feel any sort of way about that simplicity in one way or the other?
So I think the rituals are most elaborate in the Hindu religion because it's a long process. Now you have 13 days when you've still compressed them. Like, still it's 13 and it goes beyond 13 for many communities in India who are still very traditional and who would like to follow things the way they're written in the scriptures. So among Christians, it's not very different from other, but yeah, there are a lot of cultural things that we do differently in India for every religion. And for Sikhs also, it's pretty short. You just read verses from the scriptures, and then you have a prayer meet, and then you're done with it. And for in Zoroastrianism, also for Parsis, it's not very elaborate. It's very different, but it's not very, very long kind of, process. And for similarly for in Islam religion also, it's not very elaborate. So for Hindus, it's like the most elaborate one. But there are also a lot of cultural overlaps that you see. Like, there are so many specifications, like anywhere around the world, there are so many specifications about who performs what, who gives bath to to the loved one, who dresses the loved one, what kind of clothes they wear. Among Hindus also, there are like so many differences in different sects and, different kind of caste groups. There are differences like some caste groups follow the A, some caste groups follow B. So there are like so many differences and overlaps. But it's still very cultural in India, I would say. Last rites and rituals is still done by families. You still have community members coming in, helping you around. You don't cook food for like 3, 4 days till the time you're still grieving. There are friends and families who would provide for you. They will, manage food for you. You're not going to light your gas stove for like 3, 4 days, which is a very big thing. These things are slowly changing in the urban settings with more busy schedules and but in smaller towns, I would say it's still the same. Like, you will get tiffins and people will provide for everything. So yes, it's also very cultural in that sense. And those are the overlaps that you see in every religion.
Hmm.
So these cultural things and how you mourn is also somewhere kind of very similar.
Yeah. Do you think these rites and rituals help with the grieving process?
They do, because I feel that because I started my research around the at the end of second wave of COVID pandemic in India. And when I was speaking to people, they were still grieving because they couldn't perform all these traditional rites and rituals. There was no one available, because you couldn't meet your loved ones. When you're together, you laugh together, you cry together, you do things together. People were missing. Oh, I couldn't comb my mother's hair, I couldn't dress her up, or I couldn't make my father wear his coat or suit that he wanted to wear, so things were, people were missing all that physical touch. And so the grieving, I thought, was prolonged around that time,
Hmm.
because also you were carrying this guilt of not being able to do as much.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think that's something which people missed. Uh, and these rituals are crucial, so they help you grieve in a certain way, because when people bring you food, you feel special, you feel that, yeah, you're taken care of. And when they help you make arrangements, you feel that, yeah, you're not alone. So
Hmm.
yes, it becomes crucial.
Yeah, almost like a lack of like closure in certain ways that can't be performed now. Yeah. Um, uh, have you noticed any difference about the openness in which people in India are willing to talk about death and dying and end of life preparation? Or how would you describe it from your perspective?
That's a very difficult question, because I feel that even though our scriptures have openly mentioned so many things about how around the world, like how we should mourn, how we should grieve, how we should handle the body, there is so much knowledge out there, but you know, people are reluctant in talking about it. Like now in India, people have, there are articles which, there are newspaper articles which are talking about this, and it's slightly picking up now. But I don't think it's still a dinner table conversation like, oh, let's talk about the living will. Let's discuss, end of life care and how would you like to go? No, people are not comfortable. They would just think, oh, maybe you've gotten insane that you've started to discuss all these things. So it is a taboo topic. And in Hindus, any which way, death is seen as something which is not ashubh, which is something which is not auspicious. So, why are you talking about inauspicious things, like, people would say. But we have bhakti traditions in India, and you have Gita, and, you have so many, so people can actually, and if you understand these scriptures and it will help you grieve better. You'll be able to understand the nuances of, life and death, what happens to soul, and that's kind of reassuring, but I don't think that openness exists, and which is why I think these kind of books and these conversations that we are having today are very important.
Yeah, I love that you brought up, so much of the, religious texts. There is a lot of death in there. There's many, many things about it, but somehow it doesn't feel like you're really talking about death. There's still this kind of distance between it. But I can imagine, when you are someone who has lost someone and the grief is heavy, at those times when you read those words, it probably does kind of resonate with you. Um, when you were doing your research, did you find that people were generally open to talking about their traditions and their rituals? Were they excited that someone wanted to know? What was your experience there?
So, when I started researching, as I told you, I started researching around the second wave, towards the end of the second wave of COVID pandemic. So people were containing so many things. There was so much grief, there were so many stories that people actually wanted to share, and there was no one to share. So when I started talking to the death workers or the priests, they were very, I would not say excited, but they were relieved that, at least somebody is there to talk about these things. I mean, you have a listening ear, and that's something which is important. And then they were excited. Like, I remember a cremation worker, I was speaking to him, and he said, in a very casual way, he told me towards the end of the interview, oh, these days I get a lot of phone calls. People want to interview me and they want to ask me. And I thought, oh, it felt so good that, that he's getting some importance. I mean, he comes from almost like an untouchable caste in India. And now he's getting some kind of attention that he otherwise deserves. And, somebody wants to understand his quote unquote mundane, work that he does every day. And he was so excited, and he felt like he felt so good about himself that he almost felt like a warrior, that he had helped so many families. And there was a lot of not excitement, there was a lot of solace
Mm.
and contentment that I could see in these people, that, oh, we did it, that kind of a feeling. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up because I think people who work with the dead are often so invisible, right? We don't see them, but day after day they're taking care of our loved ones at the final moments of their lives. And who knows about them, who asks them about their experiences. And you did mention, the caste. Are you comfortable, or can you share maybe how class and caste system plays a role in India, in the rituals around death?
Yes, it's very important, especially so caste is something that I saw across religions, So death work is largely confined to the untouchable castes in India, which are Dalits, though untouchability is now, we have a constitutional law against it. But, it happens. I have talked to so many people, I've featured their interviews in the book, wherein death workers, they've said that, the salaries are meager, they work in difficult. I mean, when you're working close to a pyre, if I talk about the Hindu religion, uh, it's difficult, this work is not easy, and then you're dealing with dead bodies day in and day out. You're like looking at this stuff, and you see families mourning, it's not easy. So but
Mhm.
they, and then you don't get regarded, you don't get any kind of uh, applause for the work that you're doing. It's not even recognized. You almost I mean, you're almost treated like a person, oh, you just needed at this moment, and then we don't want to remember your face. It's almost like that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, that, the funeral workers, they are almost, they're like priests, Hindu priests, which are like high in the Hindu caste hierarchy. But within the priest hierarchy, they're at the bottom, because they are doing death work, or they're associated with death, and death is seen as polluting in Hindu religion. So, and they're called Mahapatras, And I mean, I was told by other pandits that no one should see their face after the 11th day. They are like achut, they're like untouchables. You should not remember, because they have done something which is inauspicious. They're seen as perpetually inauspicious. They live in that state of inauspiciousness.
Mm.
So in that sense, yes, it's something which is caste is something which is very very prominent. And as I got deeper into it, I spoke to so many activists, so many death workers. I got a I mean, since you are in research, you already know this stuff, but when it comes to death work, it is something totally different.
Yeah.
So it is something that I wanted to speak about in the book, and I wanted to give credit to these workers as public health, you know, workers who are helping us uh, with disposing of the bodies and keeping the infection at bay. So
Yeah,
all the
it's very moving to hear you talk with such passion about this and for bringing this to light. Was there other things throughout your experience of research and writing the book that kind of changed the way that you look at death rituals, end of life, the workers behind it? Anything else that you think you really want everyone to know?
so I think also death work is also very gender specific in India, and so women across religions have a very specific role in death rituals, and now I see that changing. Like I said, that I was quite actively involved in performing my father's last rite, which was not the case maybe few years back, if I want to remember that. And but those things are changing, and I think which is also something we need to look at, because last rites and rituals are otherwise last to change, but these smaller changes are, I think, worth noticing and writing about, and how these gender equations are somewhere changing. And India has a very rich mourning traditions. We have these people who perform lemons, and these traditional people from these traditional communities. We have Rudalis, we have Mirasans in Punjab. These women, they perform lemons for the families who are grieving, so they have a role to play. So we need to also look at the richness of death traditions, and not just look at it from the sense of something which is morbid.
Hmm.
So I think I want to also highlight that aspect, that there's music around death. There is, you have these mourning traditions. So we need to also look at that, and then how different communities deal with, these experiences is something which is important.
Yeah. I was listening to a bit of your interview with The Print, and you were talking about death tourism. And I think, as I've never been to India, but I'm so fascinated by, experiences in a culture that just seems way more exciting and colorful than my own. And so there is this draw to want to come and see and witness, but I'm also very aware of the fact that I want to do it in a respectful way. I want to do it in a way that honors, and I follow any sort of protocols or things that it's not like I'm coming to watch people like they're in a museum, but in a way that kind of honors things. Can you speak to death tourism and sort of things that you've seen that feel good, like in a because I know India is a place where people go to witness these things. Um, are there some things you've seen where you're like, this is a way that feels good to know that people are coming, and then these are some things that have been troublesome or challenging or harmful?
And so, if you go to Varanasi, I mean, it's the spiritual capital for Hindus. There is so much that you see. Like, uh, it is also very surreal so many times, because I remember I was, so Manikarnika Ghat and Harishchandra Ghat are two burning ghats in Varanasi, where people travel from around the world to cremate their loved ones, because it is believed that you will attain salvation if you're cremated in these two ghats. And these ghats never sleep. So you have workers, dome community, which serves on these ghats. And it is also believed, if you receive the fire to burn the pyre from these dome community members, they've been blessed by God Shiva, so then you will attain salvation. So, so you have these things around it, and then you see, how the shav, the corpse is called shav in Sanskrit. So how the shav is decorated, how it is treated. You want to see the procession, and how, I mean, it is considered inauspicious in other cities in India, but in Varanasi, death is not something which is seen as inauspicious, because it is a place of it is a place where Shiva resides. It is a place where you attain salvation. So it's a happy space in that sense, that you're going to attain mukti. So it's a very, very different experience when you go to Varanasi and you experience and see these things up close. You witness, you talk to, and a it's like a business when you go there and you see things. You will see these priests haggling, and you would see these dome workers haggling with families, and you would just see it's like an everyday thing for these people. For families, it's like, yeah, they have traveled, they have come from far, and they want to. So when you do this, and then you have there's something called Mashan Holi in Varanasi. I have mentioned about that in the book, which is a Holi in which people uh, play Holi not with colors, but they go to these ghats and they play Holi with the ashes of the people who've gone. So it is called Mashan. Mashan is like Shamshan, the cremation space, the crematory. So that's where Shiva resides. So it is believed that it's considered auspicious to play Holi on these ghats, which are otherwise seen as unauspicious in other cities, but not Manikarnika and Harishchandra Ghats. They are seen as the most auspicious spaces in Hindu religion.
Wow.
So it's something which is very, very contrary to the general belief of how you see death. In Varanasi, it is very different. So if you take a death walk, you would see these. So in the evening, the Ganga Aarti happens. So if you take a boat ride, You would see on one of the ghats, you would see this Ganga Aarti, which is very auspicious, which happens every evening on these ghats. And on the adjoining ghats, you would see these burning pyres. So,
Hmm.
you see life, death, religion, spirituality on the same tangent.
Wow.
So it is something which is very, very intriguing.
Yeah.
And it's something which stays with you.
Hmm.
So when you travel and when you visit these spaces, so for people who are coming from outside, and they, I mean, as you said, that you want to go and respect these rituals and you still want to experience them, because if we talk about death tourism, which is of course becoming slowly picking up in Varanasi and other cities like Haridwar, which are like pilgrimage sites for Hindus. So, but it's also at the same time, domes know how to, like, people who are engaged in these kind of rituals, they know how to respect. And families are very open because there is so much of, tourists coming in, they want to see it. But of course, they would not be comfortable in people using cameras. And, I also wasn't carrying my phone. I mean, I kept my phone inside because I wanted to respect the rituals,
Hmm.
but you also want to understand things. But if you go with that perspective, then it's different, then experience is also going to be different.
Yeah. Wow, thank you so much. Another interesting thing was in the Vogue article that I read, it talks about these digital deaths that we're having. We spend so much of our living lives online, but now also death is sort of existing there as well. I'm wondering how you feel about that, about this sort of, almost like never-ending life that continues online when someone dies.
I feel we invariably are leaving so much of digital footprint behind, because we have messages, we post pictures on social media, we have so much that we are, that footprint that we are leaving behind these days. So invariably you become part of, you leave your legacy, you leave your words on these platforms, and people don't, many a times, don't even know how to kind of close these accounts because they don't have access to passwords, and we are reluctant in talking about these things.
Hmm.
So, uh, you become part of this, but we have to pause here and think whether we actually need all these things. Like, do we need digital afterlife? Because all our rituals, if you see all the faiths around the world, they are meant to bring closure. We close it, and then we maybe, once a year we remember our ancestors or people who have gone. We just offer some flowers, or we'll do some prayers. In different cultures we do that, but do we actually need this digital afterlife, I mean, quote unquote drama to kind of, you know, for us? Or do we need closure? Because I feel, I mean, it's too early to comment on it right now because we'll have to wait and see how things unfold. But I still feel that it is going to have psychological and, sociological ramifications, because it is not very simple. If you have these bots, and if you decide to have a digital presence to some extent or in some way, we really have to pause and think, do we really need it? Or do we just need those traditional closures, or the closures that we are comfortable with, not even the traditional ones, but prolonging it is something, I don't know. Does it really answer anything, or is it just a fancy that, oh, I want to be alive, I want to leave that legacy? I mean, is it really a legacy? I mean, we really need to pause and think about that.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that comes up for me is we're keeping someone in the conversation that doesn't get to impact or influence the conversation. If I die, people are still, sharing stuff about my life, but I maybe don't want to be having these things shared. What if
Oh,
my diary gets published and I'm dead? So I think it takes a lot of the agency from those who have died. And there's nothing really to stop people from doing this. So I think that that's one of the challenging things, and that it can change the way that we see people after they've died. Um, and I think, through the pandemic, we had to adjust things because we couldn't be together in a lot of places in the world. Um, but I do believe the best thing for humans is to be together physically through these things. And some of those online spaces, Yeah, they might give a false sense of connection, but in us, we're not really feeling that sort of like someone showing up with a meal, right? Or hugging you or just listening to you with eye contact.
So yeah, that's something which is important. So I also feel social media is also an enabler to some extent, because it becomes a platform for people to organize these grieving circles or grief circles, or coffee meets that happen around these subjects. So it also becomes a medium in that sense that you get some kind of agency, but it shouldn't be at the cost of people meeting physically, as you said, that giving that hug, bringing, oh, I'll buy you a coffee, let's meet, something like that. So it should be used as a medium, not as an end to, grieving, I feel.
Yeah. How do you hope your book changes people's lives and deaths?
I feel that even if people start talking about death and grief, uh, which has happened, because now people come to me and they want me to, talk about the book, and they want, and I've had some amazing discussions during the book talks where people have been extremely curious, and there is undeniably a lot of
Mhm.
curiosity around death. But I think people don't have the mediums or mechanisms or spaces to discuss these aspects of life, or they're reluctant. So, but if someone takes the lead and starts it for them, then they want to ask questions. Like I have been asked so many questions around, oh, so how do atheists manage? What is their take on last rites and rituals? What about organ donation? What about body donation? So people have those questions and they are curious about these things. Oh, you tell me what happens when this happens and when you don't do this ritual. So stuff like that. So yes, if people get a platform, so if my book is an enabler in that sense, I think I've done my bit. So yes,
I
I
love that.
would want others to also kind of now, take it from here and maybe, yeah, write more around this.
What's next for you?
I'm working on another book. I'm at the editing stage. I've written it now. But that's not a book on death. So that's
You're
on
welcome to
another.
share.
I think I would let it be a surprise,
Okay.
but I can, only thing I can reveal right now is that the book is not on death, but it is somewhere a continuation of what I have already written. So it's, in that sense, it's going to be connected, and I've made sure that I honor that connection. So
Beautiful.
yes,
Thank you.
yeah.
Before we leave, I also like to ask guests if they have some advice on living. So it doesn't have to be related to this topic today, but what's some life advice that you would give to people listening today?
Live in present, honor people around you, spend time with people, and create loads of beautiful memories so that you don't have to rely on technology and bots to, remember you once you're gone. So I think leave those memories for your children, for your grandchildren, for your siblings, for your friends, so that, I mean, you bring smile on their faces, like, oh, I remember she used to, or he used to do that for me. And I mean, that's like, that's how I remember my mom. Like, on Mother's Day, I was just thinking, like, what would she do if she was around? She would just give me a hug, or maybe just, give me a peck on my forehead. And, that's how she would express her love, and how she would have understood, like, maybe to see your children being out there and, doing things that she was looking forward to, they doing. So it's like how you want to remember your loved ones. I think that's a big message for all of us, to live in present, create loads and loads of beautiful memories.
I love that. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for all the work that you've done that brought me to you so I could have this conversation and share this with others who are listening. And yeah, I look forward to learning about the next book that you have, and I'll make sure that everyone has access to getting this book as well. Thank you so much, Minashki.
I would just like to show the book.
Yes. Lovely.
And thank you so much for having me here. And I really, really enjoyed, and your questions have been super interesting. Thank you again.
Thank you for listening to the conversation with Minakshi today. Maybe you have some rites and rituals in your own culture, your own family, your own faith that you think that we should talk about on the show. If so, let me know. Reach out. You can direct me to an author or a researcher, or maybe it's you and you want to come on and talk about your own experiences. I'm here to share those experiences, those beliefs, those knowings, those practices with as many people as possible, because I think our lives are enriched so much more when we know more about each other, when we have the time to pause and think about what is life and death and how does it play a role in our lived experiences and those beyond our lived experiences. As always, thank you so much for being here, for being a part of this community with me. And I do love to hear from you. So please don't hesitate. Reach out if something in one of the episodes spoke to you, if there's a topic that you think is really important. I'm moving through them as fast as I can. And I'm always open to hear what you're thinking about as well.